Okay, so for today's video, I want to pop a quick one out there about who benefits when Britain is becoming a two-tier society. Now, we've heard masses about this in the mainstream media and also on YouTube from auditors and citizen journalists. Whether it's two-tier policing or two-tier politics, whatever it might be, Britain is no longer simply rich versus poor. It always used to be. It's not anymore. It's now becoming two entirely separate societies. There's one that has security, that has growing assets, and also reliable services and access to means to make money. And the other one is simply exposed, it's precarious, and it's absolutely failing and falling behind. So the division is really real. The division that we're looking at, it's not an economic division. It's not just economics. It also touches into housing, it touches into health, it touches into education, and most importantly, it touches into opportunity. So, first of all, you need to look at income and also wealth disparity. Now, wealth, especially poverty, financial assets, things like inheritance as well, this accumulates far more for those that are at the top. Wages for many have stagnated, especially in the lower rungs of society. Poor buggers like myself. While the cost of living has elevated massively, whether it's groceries, housing, utilities, education, all of these things have gone up, and they've gone up, a marked degree. The gap between those who own assets and those who simply rent them, it widens every single year. So that brings me on to the second thing that we need to look at, access to services. And, well, I mean, let's just say that those with money, they've got the capacity to skip queues. It's a bit like having the elite pass at Disneyland. Access to things like private healthcare is huge. They can afford, obviously, to send their children to better schools, giving them a better education, more opportunity, and that important leg up in life that millions of others simply don't get. They can afford to live in safer neighborhoods. They can afford not to have to worry about family safety, family security behind their gated communities. Those without, they basically have to rely on stretched budgets, stretched public services, and everything else, and also, most importantly, the healthcare system. As these budgets for the poor tighten, things like public services, they become, bastions of pressure. They are under massive pressure, and this tends to obviously be worse in the poorer areas. It means that service quality declines, and this is where the need is very often at its greatest. So the third thing that we need to look at brings me on to geographic divides, and these only stand to intensify. You've got affluent regions. Now, these are often inner cities, business hubs, or the wealthy suburbs. They see investment, they see infrastructure, they see opportunity. The less affluent regions, well, they're often post-industrial, or they're simply rural areas, and they suffer, I guess you'd call it disinvestment or deinvestment, however you want to term it. They've got poor transport links. They've got very weak job markets. Mobility becomes harder because maybe there aren't trains or buses where you live. If you're old, perhaps you can't drive. If you're young, perhaps you can't drive. It means that you're trapped. So mobility is massive because it's not just social mobility, but it's physical mobility as well. Moving becomes unaffordable. Commuting becomes expensive and difficult. And that brings me on to the fourth thing, which is the job and work opportunity. Now, job and work security, it differs widely between the demographics. On one hand, you've got secure, stable employment with benefits that still exist for some, tax breaks that people get to exploit. For many others, well, it's gig work, it's 0 hours, it's contract work, it's minimum wage, it's untenable positions. Jobs that you'd rather not do, but have to for ridiculous hours, and it's unreliable schedules. You've got fewer protections, you've got less bargaining power, if any at all, and you've got much more exposure to economic shocks. And let's face it, there are lots of those around the corner. So, who is benefiting from all of this? Well, it's property owners for a start, it's also capital investors. It's also definitely large corporations. They gain from rising asset values. Many of them own property as well. And, they get favourable regulation given to them by MPs and by ministers and by lobbyists. So those already with wealth are able to leverage it via tax avoidance schemes, sometimes tax evasion as well. They're able to use loopholes in inheritance law. They obviously get investment returns. They've got the financialization of the markets, which favour those with capital because they can invest at the drop of a hat. The money is there waiting to invest. Obviously, policymakers and institutions sometimes serve those interests, though this is through tax policy, through planning, through property law. And it's often without full public scrutiny, which is obviously massive. They're basically getting away with it. But there are social costs to this. Obviously, health inequality is massive. And we notice that, the rich, shall we say, socially mobile, they're much more in a position to be able to afford private healthcare where they don't wait in queues. They don't have to spend an hour or two trying to get a GP appointment to then wait 3 to 6 months for a diagnosis to then wait another year for treatment. They can jump all of those queues and just get in straight away. So, you've got an educational outcome as well. They don't have to have a state education. There's the option there to have privately funded education where undeniably the quality of the education, the subjects that are taught, are far better and far more useful than those given at a state level. You've got trust in institutions, which is being eroded. There's political polarization, that increases. And then society fragments. And we're kind of seeing that at the moment. If you think about what's going on in the world, certainly what's going on in the UK, society is fragmented. But solutions are possible. So progressive taxation of wealth and inheritance is obviously one. Affordable housing would be another. Strengthening public services in every region would be another important one. Things like labour rights protection, things like greater investment in weaker areas, transport links and such, work opportunities, things like education, healthcare. They need policies that ensure that public services don't degrade in poorer communities. If anything, it needs to go the other way. They need measures in place to limit the influence of capital that skews politics in favour of the already wealthy. And I think unless you've got MPs and policymakers that have come from poor backgrounds or are or have been working class, not Angela Rayner, but unless you've got people that have come from that background, they're not in the best position to be able to see with 2020 vision what needs to change and how it needs to change and the impact it will have further down the line. So if nothing changes, then clearly the two-tier society that we've got is going to continue. It's going to harden and it will just become granite. It will become ingrained in British culture. If policies shift, then there is a chance, there's an opportunity that you can do an Uno reversal and at least some of the declines will then be fixed. But that requires public awareness, it requires political action, and it also requires institutions that are willing to hold power to account. And that's massive. And I think that we don't do that enough. We don't hold our policymakers, our MPs, and the institutions to account. They might do wrong, they might get found out, and then very often they get given another job in a different department. They avoid fines, they avoid prison. There's no real deterrent for them to actually change. So, what are your thoughts on this? Have you noticed that the UK in particular is becoming a two-tier society? What aspects of it do you agree with? What aspects of it do you see a problem with? Drop it in the comments. Really keen to find out your opinion on this and also how it may be able to be fixed. YouTube is going to put another video there. Like, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, all that jazz. Another video tomorrow. Goldman, peace out.